Hello, everybody, and welcome to your March 2020 episode of Sunday Sit Down, the show where anything goes and nothing is left behind. As you all know, I am Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and I am very excited for today's topic. And I promise you, it's not about coronavirus. We are actually going to be talking about something that is very important in society, that is something that we have definitely been seeing spill into some of the places where we as normal people in this world, or maybe not so normal people, we do want to escape. We want to escape the daily things that are going on in terms of things like politics and the environment and all those other things that we constantly hear about on the news for a daily basis. We want to watch our movies. We want to play our video games. We want to read our books. And of course, we want to watch our sporting events. But now, especially in recent years, something has been seeping into all of these ways of escapism, and it's the concept of political correctness. Now, I have my own personal feelings about political correctness, and I'm sure that you all do too. But one of the few things that I definitely hope that we can get into the discussion today is that when someone doesn't think like you, or someone is not within your echo chamber, it doesn't mean that that person is right or wrong. It doesn't mean that person is a bad person. And there is also nothing wrong with being a little bit on edge just for the sake of entertainment. Because if you have a brain in your head, it's not always out there to offend. People just like to be flat out crazy from time to time, and sometimes we need to be that way because it helps save our sanity. And the person who is joining me today is someone who I've been following for quite some time. He is a very well-spoken, in-depth movie reviewer. When he brings me a new thing to talk about, I'm always excited to hear his perception, and I'm always excited to talk to him now because he is now talking about some James Bond movies. And unfortunately, we all won't be seeing No Time to Die until later on this year, unfortunately. But I'd like to welcome Jack from Jack Wickam. Jack, thank you so much for joining me, and good afternoon to you, because you're from the UK.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks very much for having me on. And yeah, it's, what is it, 3:45 right now? Yeah, it's good afternoon, good morning, and good night and all that cool stuff. Yeah, let's talk some political correctness, which I'm sure is not going to annoy anybody.
Well, you know something? If we don't talk about these things, then the conversations are not going to be had. Because, you know something, especially in the world of politics, which is unfortunately goes hand in hand with political correctness, one of my main goals is to just always seek out people that I know on the other side, because I just want to talk to them. I want to know what's going on in their heads. I want to know how they assess a situation. Is it the same? Is it different? And let's talk about it, and let's try and find some common ground. And God forbid we agree to disagree. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, also, when you argue with someone, especially in a mature and compassionate fashion, I don't think there's anything truly wrong with something like that, you know?
Yeah, if it's maintained, you know, if this civilness isn't there, if you're not, there's a difference between debating and name calling, you know, and I feel like too many people online, especially people who can, you know, hide behind their anonymity online, just resort too much to name calling, and that's obviously not a good thing. So yeah, it's just people just need to, I feel like, need to realize there's it's like you said it perfectly up top, you know, entertainment's entertainment. It's not always there to necessarily like be a platform for political correctness, but people need to, you know, realize it's entertainment. It's not trying to always, there are some pieces of entertainment that obviously exist to send a message, that's being the point of the particular thing. But, you know, like, God forbid there's a woman in a main role. That's not them being woke or preachy. It's just, oh, a female character in a film. Boom, done. People just need to understand that, I think, and not just resort to, you know, all the name calling, all the labeling, and all the horrible stuff that we've seen, especially over the last couple of years. Because and when I started doing YouTube videos, that really wasn't there.
Yeah, and that
Mm.
actually is it. Yeah, and that actually leads into the first question. So hold that thought because
Oh,
this will
yeah.
definitely play a part of it. The first question is, how old were you when you discovered the definition of PC culture, and how did you identify with it?
Well, I think the first primary example from, and I'm saying this strictly from a YouTube perspective, talking about films and entertainment and stuff, which is, I guess, obviously the main reason why we're here, is I guess Star Wars Force Awakens was the first time I saw people jumping on some kind of bandwagon talking about Star Wars, Lucasfilm, and Disney having some kind of agenda, or them being PC by having the main character be a woman. And oh my God, wait, she has strong force powers but no training. I mean, Mary Sue and all that stuff. And I'm just like, you've got to be joking me. And I wasn't as annoyed at it at first because this was the first taste of it. It was just the
Right.
taste of the oncoming storm of more upcoming BS that people are going to start throwing at these companies and creators. And it just really started from there because, again, before that, I'd been doing videos since like the beginning of 2014, and I was just, doing it, and I just didn't really see any of that. But it was really The Force Awakens was my first test of it, and funnily enough, that wasn't the worst of it that I was going to experience in the forthcoming years.
Right. I mean, honestly, I was really trying to think very hard to give people my first thoughts and my first encounter with political correctness. And quite frankly, I really don't know where I discovered political correctness.
Mm.
To be funny a little bit here, I think the reason why I discovered political correctness was because I discovered political incorrectness first.
Yeah.
And that was through shows that I was watching on television, like Married with Children and early episodes of The Simpsons. And especially when I got into my college years, and of course, you discovered shows like South Park, Family Guy, and probably one of my personal favorites was a Comedy Central show called Drawn Together, because the main goal of that show was to be as politically incorrect as you possibly could. And let me tell you, if they ever tried to put that on television in the last 5 years, the creators would have probably been thrown in jail because of everything that they did that was wrong. But also, when I was growing up, there was a movie, and I don't even know if you've seen it yet, but it starred David Spade and Jeremy Piven. It was called PCU. It came out in 1994. PCU stands for Political Correct University. And it is really one of those great movies that, harps on some of the greatest comedies like Animal House, The Breakfast Club, and all those great movies. And it was just showing how political correctness can just turn people into monsters sometimes, because people just suddenly have this tunnel vision about how it's got to be my way or the highway. And if you think
Yeah.
differently, it's not going to work for you. You're going to be a bad person in everybody's eyes. I think one of the funniest parts about PCU is one of the groups on campus is an ultra feminist group. And they go to this fraternity that's trying to bring back like the true culture, equality, and just like, just college. They want to bring college life back. So they throw a kegger. And so this feminist group goes in, and one of these jocks just gives their leader a beer, and she's like, I don't want this. And like one of her friends goes, no, just take it. And she takes the beer, and the guy says, party on, you're awesome. And so she goes, so if we're nice to the men, they just give us stuff? So I just thought that was really, really funny,
Yeah, I mean, political incorrectness. I guess my first, in terms of like, not in terms of YouTube. I guess like very basic, but like Family Guy, the early Family Guy, when they were willing to push buttons and say things, we're like, but now they're a lot cleaner, and as a result, in my opinion, a lot worse. Because it's the way they pushed the buttons. It wasn't like extreme per se, but it was like saying things that most other shows dare not say. And for me personally, I like, how can I put this? Political incorrectness handled properly, I think, can be hilarious because,
Absolutely.
yeah, because I understand that making fun of a certain group of people is not like a direct attack on that certain group of people, because they're poking fun at well-known qualities of a certain group of people for comedic sake, comedy. It's just
Yeah,
it's just subject to that particular area. And
right.
the Family Guy was probably my first real introduction to that. And now I say it, I can't think of any examples because that's just how I work. My brain just melts like randomly.
Yeah, because it's so funny that you mentioned Family Guy, because I still remember the reason why Fox took the show off the air was
Yeah,
because of the episode When You Wish Upon a Weinstein, which apparently people found very offensive because of all the Jewish stereotypes. Now, as a Jewish person myself, I watched that episode and I thought it was one of the funnier episodes, because I think one of the most important things about showing something that's politically incorrect is to also send a message about this is what happens when someone is not exposed to another culture. That's how the stereotypes really start to form. And unless you actually know someone that is in a group of people that you just have never spoken to before, you're never going to know that they really are just like you and me. I mean,
yeah,
another great example, especially when it comes to stereotypes of the Jewish community, would be the 1993 film School Ties. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. At the time, it was a whole bunch of actors that nobody knew, but now they're all famous. It was Brendan Fraser, Chris O'Donnell, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon, and Anthony Rapp from the Broadway show Rent and other various movies. These guys were all unknowns, and they were all in this movie. And it was the story about a Jewish boy who goes to a Catholic prep school in the 1950s, and he has to hide his identity because of the fact that these people don't really know much about what a Jewish person is, and all they do know is that they're bad people. But when he doesn't let them know that he's Jewish, they all think he's just one of the guys. They love him until, unfortunately, his secret gets out. I highly recommend that movie. It's a very interesting take. But anyway, the second question that I want to know is, before PC culture really started showing signs of extremism, was it something that, if you heard about it, was it something that really fazed you?
I'd heard the term PC before, but I never really understood it, honestly. I knew obviously the difference between right, wrong, and, the fine line between straight up attacking a group of people and just poking fun at because, human decency, but I just didn't know it had that label of being PC. Like PC, wait, is that the thing you can play games on? That's what I thought PC was. But like, I didn't know about. I heard the term political correctness, but it was when I was younger, so I didn't know what it meant. Simply like that. So no, it didn't really phase me that much. It wasn't. The only time it's really started to phase me is within the recent years when we've seen it get into these extreme lengths of personal attacks and people just name calling and stuff. But prior to all that, not really. I just understood the right and wrong of certain things when it came to talking about that the certain different groups of things that you can talk about when it comes to political correctness, really.
Yeah, I mean, political correctness, again, something that I guess really, when I heard about it, it was like pretty much the basics. Like, you
Yeah,
can't call a black person, you have to call them an African American. You can't
yeah,
call a Native American an Indian anymore. You have to call them Native American. And that was something that I sort of heard about when I was sort of like in middle school, high school. But if that was the only thing that was, the main PC culture at the time, it really wasn't necessarily something that fazed me. I think
yeah,
what's actually kind of funny is when political correctness really started to get extreme, like from 2015 on, there were so many times when people were trying to hold to those sacred things and then realize that they would just blow up in their face. Because my wife told me a really funny story about how there was it actually was something that happened in the UK. Like, there was a major student protest or a student riot, and it might have been in the UK, it might have been in France, but definitely somewhere in Northern Europe. And it had to do with a lot of, I believe, immigrants from Nigeria or students from Nigeria, plainly black students. And the person who was doing the reporting called them African Americans.
mm.
And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Or, or the fact that when a young woman or young man who happens to be black is called an African American when they can only trace their heritage back to the Caribbean islands. That doesn't make them African Americans. You know, there are even some people that I know just say, just call me black. It doesn't matter because that's what I am, you know? So, I mean, that's it's just like when I have those conversations, whether people are Hispanic or people are black or people who are Asian, you know, that they just say it themselves, you know, like I'm not going to try and tread into those waters. I just look at these people that just like regular people, because look, I work in an office with plenty of different people from plenty of different backgrounds, and we just look at each other as normal human beings, you know, it doesn't really matter. But that's what I think is kind of funny. I think that the problem with the extremism on political correctness in popular culture is the fact that nowadays these people who are trying to basically say you have to follow these rules, it really ends up just getting blown right back into their faces. I think the most hilarious thing about it all is that the people who scream the loudest in PC culture are nothing but a bunch of spoiled rich white kids. And I think that that's what makes it that's what makes it really, really funny to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like people who, it's like social justice warriors, people who scream, say, oh, you can't say that, and you have to refer to this by this, are not even from the culture or the group that they're trying to say that you can't say that stuff about. So it's like you're saying about black people and African Americans. It's like you're being told what to call them by someone who isn't an African American or a black person. So you like just observe, if it's a group of people, observe the group of people and let them educate you. And the social justice warrior things, I don't know if that's going to be an upcoming topic, but that really irritates me. It's like you're getting offended by someone saying something about something you have nothing to do with, and I feel like a lot of times the people who speak up about that stuff are trying to just maintain face and try to make themselves look good by abolishing or speaking against political incorrectness. And I feel like that's another bad usage of political incorrectness, is people just trying to look like the good guys by saying, hey, you can't say that, when in actuality they have no real say in it because they're not from that particular group of people that they're trying to defend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really funny. Like, one of the major extremes, I mean, it never happened to me specifically, but I just know that there are just some people that will yell and scream if a white person's walking around and they don't have a diverse group of friends, you know, or when a social justice warrior, yeah, we'll talk about them a lot because they're pretty much the main reason why PC culture has gone extreme, where they
Yeah.
basically say, oh, I'm not racist, I have one black friend. I'm like, by saying that, you are showing racist undertones and you just don't know it. You know, it's like, if I meet someone that I just get along with, you know, like if I meet someone black, brown, polka dot, and if you and I share so many commonalities, and even if we disagree on things, you're going to be my friend. You know, one of the few things that I absolutely love about YouTube is the fact that I've made so many different friends from so many different backgrounds. I've met people who are friends of mine from all different kinds of ethnic backgrounds, different colors, different ways of life, different sexualities, and we're just friends. We just talk about the things we love to talk about. And all those things are just non-existent to us. It's just a person and another person just chatting, having a good time. That's what it's really all about. I just wish that, and I know that the people who go to extremes are really the minority in the majority. But as I always say, unfortunately, it's the minority that is right now screaming the loudest, and it's causing a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's because it's the vocal minority, because they have that platform, and it's just unfortunate that it's just unfortunate that the negative has to override the positive, like all that stuff you just said. That's how humanity should be, but it's almost made seemingly non-existent in the world of people just shouting and screaming on Twitter about all this and that, and it really does. It's sad. It saddens me. It bums me out a lot, really.
Right. So now let's go. And I think you already talked about it, but we'll definitely expand it a little bit more. And that is your first sign of the current state of PC culture and what it was starting to turn into, the current state, meaning. So you already started talking about The Force Awakens.
Mm,
So let's talk a little bit more about that because clearly after that, you started to be a little bit more observant, so to speak,
mm.
on everything else that was actually happening. So let's elaborate a little bit more about
Well, I was actually just thinking about it, getting ready to talk about it, because after Star Wars, it was switching about 6 months later, a film came out called Ghostbusters, the all-female
that.
Ghostbusters.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's where it just really, I mean, the Star Wars one was bad, but this one, I mean, the marketing for the film wasn't great. The trailers weren't very good. I wasn't excited for the film because I hadn't seen the original Ghostbusters, so it's like, I'm not looking forward to a new film of a franchise. I'm whatever. It doesn't look any good, whatever. But I remember specifically there was this Reddit post that I saw, because Reddit is the hive of all positivity. It was on the Ghostbusters Reddit page, I think, and it was when the reviews were coming out, and I was like, the reviews are actually quite good, 80 something percent, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna go give it a shot now. But there was this one post on Reddit, I'll never forget it, for all the wrong reasons. I'm paraphrasing, but it basically said, okay, so the reviews have come out and the critics are saying it's positive. Let's go and review bomb the hell out of this film and prove to everybody that this film is terrible, so people doesn't go watch it to support it and give it money. Basic paraphrase. And this was like a week before the film came out. And just that particular sentence, let's show everybody how terrible this film is. And I'm just sitting there reading it like, what? And all this, you can just tell, stems from the fact that it's an all-female cast. And it's like, why? It really just baffles me how people can be that petty and pathetic like that. And not just the whole judging a film before you've seen it, but tie that in to the reason why someone is saying that being because the film is an all-female version of a pre-existing franchise, which even I will say, like, when they do all-female versions of, like, it feels kind of like a hand-me-down sometimes. It's like, okay, you want more lead female roles. Okay, female, I remember they said they were going to do a female Jump Street film. Here's Jump Street, here's Rush Hour, here's Ghostbusters. And it just feels like there's no real thought or creativity put into it necessarily. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's just on the film by film basis. But going back to Ghostbusters, it's just like you really have that much of a problem with an all-female cast that you have to manipulate people and try and just destroy this film because of your insecurities. That was the first truly toxic experience I had when it came to that area of the online film world and political incorrectness, and it just drove me insane. And I think from then on, I'm just like, oh, this is how it's going to be, isn't it? Just
Well,
and yeah,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
I definitely want to give you my thoughts on Ghostbusters. But before that, the way that I first started to dive a little bit deeper into it was actually through the video of one of my friends who was on YouTube. She's not here anymore, but she was so angry about the fact that a certain author wrote a book and got criticized over the fact that her cast of characters in her book was not diverse. It was all white people. And so she made this tirade. Now, I personally understood the message of this video. It was basically saying that a person who writes something and it may not be exactly what you want, if the story is good and the cast of characters have great personalities and great stories around them, just because of the fact that they may not be a rainbow of skin colors, that doesn't mean that the person is racist or sexist or what have you. And basically, this woman got torn to shreds. She was called a bigot. She was basically mobbed, absolutely insane. And I couldn't believe that. I'm like, just give me a good story. If I was a person who cared so much about lead characters or having my skin color, then Beverly Hills Cop would not be one of my favorite comedies of all time. I mean, it's Eddie Murphy, for crying out loud. I love Beverly Hills Cop. But the whole funny thing about Ghostbusters was, when I first heard that they were making a third Ghostbusters film, and I am someone who owns the original two, yes, I was very excited. The fact that they were staying in the vein of the concept of having Saturday Night Live cast members, you know, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, Leslie Jones, even more excited. But then the twist, and that was the fact that we're going to take these characters and we're just going to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to make a newer version of the original film. This is not Ghostbusters 3, you know? And my wife and I went to see it. Did we laugh? Sure, we had some fun. I personally thought that Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones were a riot. But my issue with the movie was it was a poorly written film. It really was not entirely great. I fell somewhere in the middle. But my issue, more so my wife's issue with this movie, she was like, why couldn't one of these women be like a distant relative or maybe a daughter or a niece of one of the original Ghostbusters, and this is them passing the torch on to the new generation? That is what Ghostbusters Afterlife is. That's what the story is going to be this summer. And that movie is going to do so much better than this one. And that's my issue with Ghostbusters 2016. It's the fact that they basically just wanted to retcon everything and basically say, this is it. This is Ghostbusters now. That's the problem. Trying to not even come up with an idea that is original, and you're just trying to replace it. That's where I think the frustration comes with people who are trying to see movies now. And I think that that's one of the major issues that we have with the entire industry as a whole. It's the fact that they're just afraid to push the bar further anymore. And they just want to take everything that's already been done and recreate it, recast it. I mean, when my wife and I went to go see the new Disney Pixar film, Onward, we saw the trailer for that new David Copperfield movie starring Dev Patel. And my wife is looking at it and she's like, there were no rich Indian or Black people in the United Kingdom in the 1800s. This is so historically inaccurate. But she said, it seems to be more of a fantasy-driven story, so yes, you could do whatever you want with it. You know what I mean? But that's the funny thing. It's like, my wife is a history teacher. She knows about all these things, but that's one of the few things that gets her goat. She doesn't like it that people force actual epic stories that are true to life to be historically inaccurate for the sake of political correctness and diversity. She doesn't appreciate that at all. Does she have any issues with a female character being the lead role? No. A Black person, a gay person? No. If the story is good, the story is good, and the characters are good, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. People want good stories. I mean, speaking of Onward, I think one of the main issues that Disney currently has is the fact that they love to get on their soapbox and basically say, hey, guess what, everybody? We have a gay character in our movie. There was a news article that was printed about how Onward was going to have the first openly gay or member of the LGBT community. You know what? If you didn't tell anybody about it and made a big deal about it, when people actually saw it in the movies when they were going to see it, nobody would have cared. They were like, oh, a gay character. That's awesome. But the fact that they had to get on their soapboxes and make a big deal like this was the main point of the movie, I feel that that is wrong.
Yeah, it's fun. I saw all those articles, and I remember watching Onward the other day, and it didn't even occur to me, because I think the character is, I think it's the police officer, but
Yes.
it's such a brief appearance, so brief. So it's like, I feel like they take advantage of it to try and promote themselves and put a label on it and say, look how good we are, people. But if it means nothing in the film, what's the point? Like, I remember there was something about Black masking Birds of Prey being gay at one point. I don't know if that even came to pass. If it did, it had no effect on the character, no effect on the story. And usage like that, where they try and put it off as representation, say, look guys, we're being diverse, but in that they're not really being diverse. They're just
Yeah,
putting a label on something to give themselves more clout and to make themselves look better, and that's what irritates me.
yeah.
And there was I was watching an episode of Doctor Who. I watched Doctor Who series 12 the other day, and lots of Doctor Who fans are all up in arms about how it's going.
I know. I
And
know.
there's one episode involving a gay couple, two married men, and I thought to be like, okay, people are saying it's going woke with all this rubbish, but in the show they don't try and force feed it down your throat that, oh look, it's a gay couple, guys, look, gay couple, we're being cool. They were just two guys who were together. One of them was in mortal danger, being taken over by an alien parasite and whatnot, and they were just a couple, and it came across so natural, and it really occurred to me, like, at first I was like, okay, this feels forced, but at the same time I was like, wait, no, it's not being forced because they're not mentioning it. So if they just do it where it feels so natural, then it won't feel forced. If they don't try it and put a label hashtag on it, then I think people start to really warm up to it and it'll feel more natural. And the only reason why they think it's unnatural is because they haven't seen it enough up until that point for it to become natural to them, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, take a look at one of the most successful sitcoms from the late 90s, the show Will and Grace, which featured two gay men on the show. The
Yeah.
show was not just successful about the fact that, it was the first time where the driving force of the show was, in fact, two gay men, but the characters were so lovable. I've watched a few of those episodes. I'm not gay, but I think that Jack is one of the best characters on that show. I think that Sean Hayes is absolutely hysterical. He's an ingenious comedic character. And that's the reason why that show lasted for the many years that it did. It's the reason why the show came back for a couple more seasons. I mean, one of my favorite shows right now on Netflix is a show called Grace and Frankie, starring Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, who is actually a gay woman in real life playing a straight woman. And it also stars Sam Waterston and Martin Sheen. And Martin Sheen and Sam Waterston, two straight men, are playing a gay couple. And it's just fun to watch. These people are such talented actors. The show is so rich with character development and story. It's filled with hilarious comedy. It's basically a story about two couples, and the men in the couples did not tell their wives that behind their back they were actually forming a homosexual relationship, and then they broke up with their wives, and their wives become great friends. It's such an ingenious idea for a show, and it's been one of the highest rated shows on Netflix. It's in its 6th season right now. I'm currently watching it. I think it is great. I laugh when I watch it all the time. Highly recommend it. But that's the thing. It's natural.
Yeah, exactly. It just, as long as you don't, again, if you just don't put a label on it and you don't try and promote it as being representation, then people might not react to it as much. And again, it has to mean something. If it doesn't mean anything, if it's just there for the sake of being there, then what's the point? Then just don't use
Exactly.
it to your advantage. That's all I say.
I agree with you. So
Mm.
we're going to continue a little bit on with this topic with the 4th question, and that is your thoughts on PC culture affecting entertainment, especially with some of the things that people are now saying in Hollywood. I'll give you the two perfect examples. There's too many white people, Oscars so white, Oscars so male.
Um, Yikes. I remember when that first happened, the Oscar So White thing. I think it was, I don't know if it was started by Jada Pinkett Smith when Will Smith wasn't nominated for Concussion, and oh, Oscar So White, blah blah blah. And I mean, it's not the Oscars' responsibility for diversity, but at the end, also, it's like I say this every time because it happens every year. Oscar So White, Oscar So Male, blah blah blah, and the Oscars are there to award what's the best in film that year.
Mhm.
Not, and this year especially, when there was like, oh, there was no female directors nominated, and I remember the director of Honey Boy was like, oh, I can't remember what she said, but she was basically complaining about the lack of female directors, and it's like, do you want the Oscars to just hand out participation awards just for the sake of nominating a woman. I don't want that, because I think it would mean so much more if a woman was actually nominated without it being like, oh, the nominations for best female director, that would feel pandering to that.
Yeah, I mean, people keep forgetting the fact. I think what's really funny is, do they even realize that a female director already won Best Director? I mean, Catherine Bigelow
Mm.
won. I mean, I still remember that the year that Detroit came out and she directed it but didn't get nominated. I personally was extremely pissed off about the fact that that movie practically got shunned by the Oscars. It was not because of the fact that Catherine Bigelow was a female director. As a director, I thought she did
Yeah.
a phenomenal job and was so angry that she didn't get nominated. Same for Will Poulter not getting nominated for Best Supporting Actor in that film, because he was a terrifying character, but he gave me such an amazing performance. And going
Yeah.
into this year's Academy Awards, the fact that people were so upset that Mariel Heller didn't get nominated for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Well, I like that movie, but I didn't think that the directing was perfect. That's all that I'm going to say. I had my issues with the movie a little bit. I thought that there were some really off-color moments in that movie. Now, I haven't seen Little Women, but Greta Gerwig did get nominated for Best Director recently in years because of Lady Bird, which is a very good movie. Lady Bird is a great movie, but I don't think that I can't say anything for Little Women because she didn't get nominated for director, but she did get nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. I don't think that there's anything to sneeze at there, you know what I mean? But I agree with you. I mean, like, the year where there were no female directors, were you seriously going to force the Oscars to give a nomination to Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman? Seriously. Not that Wonder Woman's a bad movie. I love Wonder Woman.
Awesome. But yeah, like Little Women, I did see it. I really liked it, and I personally, unpopularly, am not really a fan of Lady Bird, but whatever. But it's like Greta Gerwig did a great job in Little Women, but would I have replaced Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, Sam Mendes, Jojo Rabbit with her? No, because what it comes down to is just subjective opinion on the films, and as the directors as directors. And I just wish more people would see the difference between, okay, what deserves to be nominated because it deserves to be nominated, or what should be nominated for the sake of representation. And I think it just gets too toxic. Oh, yeah, toxic's the obvious word to use.
Yeah.
And also Marielle Heller. I love Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, but I would not have nominated her over Taika Waititi, Tarantino, etc., etc. And also the Oscars so white thing. It's the exact same thing. It's not the Oscars. You just nominate who's best. That's all that matters. Not nominate, black people for the sake of it. Blah blah blah. It does my head in. It
I
really.
mean, look, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree with me, but I seriously believe that both of Mahershala Ali's Oscars were so worthy, because I loved him in Moonlight and I loved him in Green Book. I thought that those were two
Yeah.
fantastic performances. And again, it's like, I'm still trying to understand, why these things keep coming up. Also, you did mention Will Smith in Concussion. I saw
Yeah.
that movie and I didn't think it was great. I had my issues with that movie. I think it could have been so much better. I truly do. But when we take a look at the movies that have been nominated and the movies that have won awards, I mean, Moonlight did get nominated. We've gotten two Latino directors win for Best Director. Three, I think, and Iñárritu, Del Toro, and Cuarón. They've all been given Oscars for Birdman, The Shape of Water, and Gravity. And I have my issues with Gravity. I thought that movie was boring as hell. I did not like Gravity. But I have no issues with Alfonso Cuarón. I think he's a great director. And I mean, Ang Lee has also won the Academy Award for Best Director for Life of Pi. So I'm still trying to understand that, especially in the last 10 years, why are we still having this discussion? Because the movies that do have the diverse cast, that do have the diverse directors, they are winning awards. I mean, in 2008, Slumdog Millionaire, Best Picture. There's no white people in that movie.
2019, Parasite, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay. South Korean film, first time a foreign language film's ever won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. So I think the diversity is there, but I guess people are. I guess a lot of people are upset on the female side of the diversity not being included. But again, it's just what's best, and what's best is what's best as per the subjective opinion of the Oscars. Now, obviously, there's nothing wrong with people thinking Greta Gerwig should have been nominated because they think she deserved it because they loved her directing. There's nothing wrong with that. But
No.
saying, no, she should have been nominated because she's a woman, and I think the Oscars are being sexist because she didn't nominate a woman. That's obviously not fine. They need to understand the fine line between subjective opinion on the film itself and the diversity issue. And yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
how I can put it into words other than just irritating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at last year's Oscars, don't forget who won the Best Actor, Rami Malek. He's a Coptic Christian from Egypt. I mean,
Exactly.
that was a big thing too. But I will say, even though I haven't seen it, it is on my list of movies to see. I do want to see The Farewell, because I will say that one movie, when it did come out last year, didn't get a lot of love at the Oscars. That movie was Crazy Rich Asians. I thought that movie was hilarious. And I also, seeing a lot more of her movies, I am a big fan of Awkwafina. I think that she is extremely talented. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people said she was really great in The Farewell. I really couldn't make a judgment call, but would I have liked to have seen Awkwafina win an award for Best Actress? Yes, I think that she is one of these actresses in Hollywood today that very few people truly know how to use her to her true potential, because I remember when they made Ocean's 8. Now, I thought that Ocean's 8 was fun, but I also am not really a fan of all the Ocean's films. And she was so underused, because when you see her in Crazy Rich Asians, I'm like saying to myself, why is her phone not ringing off the hook? Why is she not in so many more movies? This woman is funny. Not because of the fact that she's Asian, she's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, I completely didn't. I forgot she was in Ocean's 8. To be honest, I don't remember a lot about that film, which tells you all you need to know or not. But like, but yeah, she was. I liked her in Jumanji. She does a very good Danny DeVito impression, and I know she's going to be in Shang-Chi as well. So I think people are starting to notice Aquafina's the real deal, and I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to seeing her in more stuff, 'cause she's really good.
And I've even saw her use her voice acting capabilities. She was the voice of one of the Skeksis in the Netflix series Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, and she was great. And I'm really excited because she's going to be lending her voice to the new Disney canon classic towards the end of this year, Raya and the Last Dragon. So I'm really excited to see her in a Disney film as well. And
Yeah.
she's also got a show right now called Nora from Queens. I like the fact that she's in that. I saw her having ironically, I've never actually said this on my show, but I'm going to say it now. I didn't realize that I actually stole the title Sunday Sit Down from Sundays on NBC Today, because Willie Geist, the anchor, has a Sunday Sit Down. I never even realized that. His interview with Awkwafina is brilliant. I love it. I'd love to see her on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld. I'd love to see those two comedic minds in a room together and just watch the magic happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go into the fifth question, and that is another thing that spawned from this extreme PC culture movement is the concept of cancel culture and the mentality that it brings, and the fact that it basically is driven by social media, especially considering the fact that social media is sort of becoming more of a negative thing on society right now rather than a positive thing. It's now not only making people more antisocial, it's now being more of a divider than a uniter. You know what I mean? And I think that the biggest thing that we saw thanks to social media with all of this is The Last Jedi. And also the famous saying that came out of this whole movement, go woke, go broke.
Yeah. Social media, Twitter, it's pretty much just become like a weapon, more or less. And I guess like the two big examples of cancel culture, I think, is there's the James Gunn situation where
Yeah.
people purposefully, and this is what I don't understand, where people, they actually look for reasons to be mad. So they deliberately go back through 10 years of James Gunn's Twitter posts to find some old, granted, horrible jokes that he said, which he has endlessly apologized for, but they had to dig those up and bring them to the spotlight. Just the one person did it, and that cost him briefly the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 gig, and also more recently the Kevin Hart Oscars thing.
Yes, glad you brought that up. I was going to if you didn't.
Yeah, because it's like, why? Kevin Hart is a funny guy sometimes, for the most part. Why do you just have to do that? Why are people just so obsessed with outrage? And it's like they feed off it. It's like the food. It's like, oh, we need to. This person's going to be doing this. Ha ha ha! Let's go through the real Twitter posts. I just don't understand it. I just don't know why people are like that. It's just the cancel culture. It's like if people don't see the world exactly how they want to see it and how people speak and how people treat things, they just have to go on a tirade and just produce a tsunami of negativity and just this, that, and
It's really, it for me personally, it's really, especially when it comes to social media, it's
yeah,
the extreme of the typical YouTube hate comment. That's
yeah,
what I really think it is, because one of the things that makes me so angry about social media is the anonymity that it creates, and we touched upon that very, very briefly early on today. But the fact that people, because of the fact that they don't have their real names or their real faces, I mean, I think that's really funny. The people that do the most damage are the people that like have no subscribers, they don't have they have a fake name, they don't even have a picture of themselves, and they're the ones that are making the most noise because they seriously feel that nobody is going to find them. And I have a tag for some of those people. I call them the basement virgins, because those are the people that probably have no friends and don't have anything better to do with their lives. They probably made bad decisions in college and they have no job, no money, and they're just, and that's another thing that I always say when it comes to those real extreme extremists, these are just unhappy people. And the only way for them not even to be happy, they basically say, if I'm miserable, then everybody has to be miserable.
yeah,
Nobody's allowed to be happy in my world.
yeah, drag them down to their pathetic level of miserableness because the world revolves around them, so it has to fit their world. So if I'm miserable, everyone's miserable, and
Yeah.
it may to a degree they are successful temporarily because I see their comments and it annoys me. But then I remember what you just said, they're a basement virgin, a cousin humping basement virgin. So it's just like, boom, that's what John Campea calls them. So yeah, I quickly just brush it aside and just like, yeah, I'm not I'm not gonna fall for it. So you can hide behind your fake picture of whoever that meme person is, and you
Yeah.
can just take your words and stick them where they don't shine.
Yeah, because I think one of the funniest things, I want to talk about two specific things that happened. In the one thing was not really such a big thing, but one of them has become a very, very recent story. It has nothing to do with entertainment. Well, technically it does because it's a television commercial, but the first thing I want to talk about was a movie that was supposed to come out in theaters last year, and now it's on Amazon Prime. If you have a Prime account, you can watch it for free. It's a movie called LaQuisha. Now, I haven't watched it yet, but part of me sort of wants to do a YouTube thing. Like, that was actually one of the original things that I wanted to do with you. And also, I didn't get the chance to do this, so I'm glad I'm bringing this up now. This was actually supposed to be a discussion with two people, everybody.
Mm.
Rob, who is another great YouTuber out there. Unfortunately, he hasn't been making many videos lately because he's been so busy, but he is very much passionate about this topic. It would have been great to have both of these gentlemen in the room with me to have this discussion. And part of me wanted to do this little additional project with the both of you, and then we could do a live show and discuss it. But LaQuisha is the story about a white guy who is trying to find a job in radio, and he
Mm.
can't find a job. And the reason why is because they're not looking for another white guy on the radio. So he pretends that he's an overweight, boastful black woman named LaQuisha, and he becomes one of the biggest radio shows in the United States. And that, to me, because the mainstream and the extremists were basically saying this is the most racist piece of crap that I've ever heard of in my life, and it never made theaters, and now you can only see it on Amazon. But this reminds me of a movie like Tootsie or Some Like It Hot, and these are some of the greatest comedies of all time. Or Mrs. Doubtfire, if I really want to push it a little bit further, In order to do something that's important to me, I have to take a massive extreme and go that way. There's also another movie that came out in the 1980s called Soul Man, which never would fly today. It didn't even fly in the 1980s. It starred C. Thomas Howell. Basically, he wanted to go to a college and he couldn't go unless he was black. So he basically made himself blackface throughout the entire film. I could see where people, even in the 1980s, would call that a bad idea. But again, this is all what these movies have in common: comedy. It's not meant to be truthful. It is there to make you laugh. And the fact that just because of the fact that a white guy sounds like a black woman, it's bad, it's racist. No. First of all, everyone, and the funny part is, the people who yell about this movie and give this movie bad reviews, they didn't see it. They just saw the trailer and they're like, bad, 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 bad. I still have to watch the movie myself. I really want to see what it's all about, and I just want to see if I'll find it funny, And the second thing is a commercial that recently has been shown on television for the superstore Target. There is a brand of beauty products called the Honey Pot, and the woman who made it was black. That's great. Independent business owner, doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, good for you. But her commercial aired on Black History Month, and the white community, and by the white community I mean, because let me also make this clear, it's not just the far left that goes extreme, it's the far right too. There are problems in regards to PC culture and all this other hubbub on both sides. God, I sound like my president right now. I'm going to get hell for this. But anyway, the fact that in her commercials she says, knowing that my product is successful, that the next black girl will have an opportunity like this makes me happy that I did this. These people went berserk and gave this woman's products negative reviews, even though they never tried it. They hated the fact that she said the next black girl. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing that people really need to take into account with everything, and that's the magic word of context. And it just, yeah, it's like you say, it's like giving that film negative reviews but haven't even seen it. It's like, you just have an agenda against black people then, and that would probably, I'm assuming this because I'm not really familiar with the film, but I bet people who are bashing that film for being racist might even be not black themselves, and again trying to be the whole social justice warrior thing. And it's that's when it's just blatant, is when they don't even see it, but then they just review bomb it and do this, that, and the other, and just call it this, that, and blah blah blah, and you're just like, well, you've clearly just lost your own argument and your own
Yeah.
you're trying to prove, because you haven't even seen the damn thing. So what the hell are you even trying to talk about? You're clearly just either just trying to be a social justice warrior and keep face, or you're just a blatant racist and you don't like people who don't share your skin color or your gender to be successful. So just zip it and throw the key away. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about a cult favorite comedy, even though it is absolutely, I mean, like, I've seen clips of it and I just think it's bad, but I'm not going to knock people for making it. White chicks, the Wayans brothers dressed up as white women. I mean, come on. You know what? That's outrageously funny, first of all, because I know the Wayans brothers. They're really, really funny. But to actually see them doing something like that, like, why would you complain about that? It's just an outrageous comedy. You know, it's like, we're going to get a little further into that whole concept, but I'm just like saying, you know what? I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of the time, when a person makes a movie, that person is really not trying to offend someone. That person is just trying to show a creative vision. I mean, with the whole concept of go woke, go broke, I want to talk about A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay. Now, I have my issues with Ava DuVernay. They're not negative issues. My issue with Ava DuVernay is she always misses the mark for me. I truthfully feel that Ava DuVernay has the ability to become one of the greatest directors of all time. Not male, not female, director. I want to make that clear. But the problem is I've seen a lot of what she's done. She's an excellent, excellent, excellent documentarian. Her documentary films are fantastic. But I've seen Selma. And I wanted to see Selma so badly because David Oyelowo playing Martin Luther King, he looked phenomenal. And he was. He even got nominated for Best Actor, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he won, but I know he didn't win, but I know he got nominated. But the movie itself had major problems. I think that my issues with Selma was the fact that it was over dramatic. It was over dramatized. I mean, like, my joke in regards to that movie is people loved that movie because they just wanted to see Oprah fall down. I mean, like, all these moments in the movie where Oprah falls down in slow motion. She did that like 2 or 3 times in the movie. I'm like, why are you doing this? What is this supposed to symbolize? I don't get it. The movie could have been one of the best movies of the year. I thought it was good, but it had those faults. My issue with A Wrinkle in Time, the fact that people like Brie Larson talked about how she felt that the reason why people didn't like A Wrinkle in Time was because of the diverse cast. Okay. I read the book before I went to see the movie. The book is amazing. It's zany, it's whimsical, it's crazy. 2/3 of that material is nowhere to be found in that movie. The character development of these characters is practically non-existent. It has nothing to do with the fact that the main character is a girl from a interracial couple. A black and white man had a couple of kids. That has nothing to do with the reason why I don't like the movie. The writing is poor. The direction is poor. It's just a poorly made film. And you want to know what's really funny? The critics agreed. And the fans agreed as well. The fact that the media talked about the fact that this was a book that was written in the 1960s. It was meant to have an all-white British cast. I think it was British. And the fact that it was all different kinds of people. Well, if they stuck to the main plot of that film from beginning of that book from beginning to end, nobody would have cared. You know, the fact that it was the fact that diversity was the driving force, and the fact that the director was a female was the driving force of why people should go to see this movie. Movie tanks, because that's not why people go to see movies.
I didn't even remember that about the film, to be honest. I just remember the film being out and everyone saying it was terrible, and I personally agree. I thought the film was quite bad, but I thought it was bad. I would echo your sentiments. I thought it was bad because it was a poor film, terrible acting, terrible direction, blah blah blah, and the whole diversity thing. When I was watching it, it didn't even occur to me because it
Yeah,
just. Oh, I never read the book, so that's one thing. But at the end of the day, it's just like film's a film. The characters are characters. Just give me a well-written film, well-directed film, and interest me. That's all I need. I don't care who's in it, what color skin they have. Again, Wrinkle of Time, none of that occurred to me. It's just I watched the film and I was bored out of my mind because it was a poorly done film. That's it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the whole Brie Larson comments, I vaguely remember now, but I completely forgot about that.
yeah.
And it's just that's another thing about the whole political correctness thing is people then using it as an excuse to why people don't like something like Wrinkle in Time. Brie Larson saying, "Well, I guess people didn't like it because there was diversity in it." No,
Yeah,
people
like
did.
I don't want a 40-year-old white dude telling me what he thought about A Wrinkle in Time. The movie was not made for him. Well, you want to know what's really
Yeah.
funny? That movie was actually supposed to be made for people who read the goddamn book. That's the reason why Harry Potter was turned into movies. That's the reason why The Hunger Games was turned into movies. That's the reason why, oh God forbid I say that, that's the reason why Twilight was turned into movies, to appease the fans of the books. I mean, I always say that the greatest trilogy of films ever made from a filmmaking standpoint is Lord of the Rings. It is beautiful, even
Yeah.
though there are a couple of changes for the sake of cinematic value. And for me personally, I hate the original ending of Return of the King. I love what Peter Jackson did for that ending in Return of the King. It was done for the movie going public, but it was also done for the fans. If you really wanted the fans to see A Wrinkle in Time, you would have made that book from a plot standpoint, from a character development standpoint for the fans. I mean, also, I will admit that a movie that also came out in theaters that was very different from the original source material in recent years was Ready Player One. I love the book, but I went to see Ready Player One with my wife, and she loved it. She loved the movie. I enjoyed it too. I loved it a great deal. But then I told her about all the changes that were made for the sake of making the movie. And she said to me, if they would have stuck to the actual story page for page, this would have been one of the most boring movies I ever saw. And I agree with her. I agree with her. But that's the point that I'm trying to make. You gotta give the moviegoers, but you've also got to give the fans the true essence of these stories. You can't focus on the politics when it
Yes.
comes to movies. That's why these movies are failing. That's why The Last Jedi, even though it was very successful in its opening weeks at the box office, when people found the agenda, the movie tanked. That's the reason why nobody cared about going to see Rise of Skywalker. That's the reason why Captain Marvel didn't do as well as people wanted it to do. Well, actually, it did do very well. But the overall attitude that people had coming out of that movie was the fact that the movie was so-so. And yes, the movie was entertaining, but is it Captain America Civil War? Is it Spider-Man Homecoming? Is it Avengers Endgame? Fuck
No.
no, it's not. It's not. It's a nice little filler. The chemistry between Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson is fun. The cat's adorable, but it's
Yeah.
not the best movie in the bunch.
No.
It's not.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's not the best film simply because there's just better films out there, and it's got nothing to do with who's in it and any agendas in it. And yeah, it's just the Captain Marvel's another good example of people just like pre-hating on it, like getting ready, like, oh, it's coming out soon. We get to hate it, and people saying this and that about Brie Larson when minus the Wrinkle in Time thing with the whole like blaming people's perspectives and whatnot. Brie Larson, I think, is great, and most of her other comments, there's been nothing wrong with them. And calling for more representation, calling for more female critics, nothing wrong with that. Just
No.
exactly. But then people are like, what? You want more women to do that? Blah.
Oh,
You know.
for crying out loud! You see, the dangerous thing about having more women critics is I think they're going to trash bad movies even worse than men do.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
that and again, I'm open for that. Personally, I'd love to see all different kinds of people just, I'd love to see a rainbow of people just trash one movie to high heaven, and I really want to see who gives the best bad review. I really want to see that one day. And you want to know what's also kind of funny? You want to know what's also kind of funny? Isn't it ironic that nobody after, especially after this year's Oscars, nobody talked about the fact that we had the very first female composer win the Academy Award for Best Score?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that nobody made a big deal about that.
I might have seen one Twitter post, but yeah, you'd think that would be in this day and age of the whole like Me Too era, the whole political correctness era, that would be a massive
Yeah.
talking. But
Yeah,
it's like,
I mean, the score for Captain Marvel was actually composed by a woman, and for me personally, I said this in my Captain Marvel review. I thought that that was one of the best scores in the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I loved that score.
I was not even aware of that, to be
Yes,
honest.
I think it's an excellent score. Take out the movie and watch it again when you have the time, and give a good listen to the music, or even just go online and listen to the soundtrack. I think it's a great score. I really do.
I'll give it a watch when Disney Plus comes out.
Well, anyway, we got two more questions, and I think that this one's going to be a lot of fun. Let's talk about the fact that there are people that are trying to fight back. I think that two or three, actually, three of the biggest combaters of political correctness right now, whether it's in a subtle way or if it's truly in your face, is Seinfeld, famed actor and one of my personal favorites, James Woods, and also, of course, South Park. One of the best ways to fight PC culture right now seems to be political incorrectness. And these are the things that seem to be fighting the fight. But the question is it the right way to do it? Because the way that I look at it is political incorrectness is now, scary enough, one of the biggest defenders of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. It's kind of scary about the fact that that's actually one of the big major driving forces against PC culture.
Yeah, it seems kind of contradictory to even think that. It, but like that's a good thing about political incorrectness. It can be funny, but it can also be used to educate and inform. And using political incorrectness to battle the whole the I don't know if the toxicness of people trying to use political correctness. You can obviously poke fun at it by by saying, oh, they're a bunch of basement virgins or whatever, but you can also again use it as a tool to like show people, hey, you don't have to think that way, you don't have to shout and scream and do this and that, but obviously doing it if it's done in a politically incorrect way, just express it in a colorful manner as in form in terms of educating those people in doing that. I personally haven't seen a lot of examples of that. I'm not like the examples you just gave, I'm not very familiar with. That's just me being a rubbish human being, so I don't really have a lot of exposure to political incorrectness being used as a means to fight back, but I can see ways where it can be used to do so. And I think I do want to see an example of that done where South Park, for instance, because I know they target everybody and they just don't care. So they're going to battle these basement virgins, quote unquote, but also provide like a little bit of a message in there saying, hey, stop shouting and screaming and start talking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the other things that I didn't mention, but I'll talk about it now, was the whole thing that happened on The Simpsons with the character Apu. You know,
Oh,
there was that film that came out called The Problem with Apu, and the fact that this guy was just so upset with the fact that the voice of Apu was done by Hank Azaria. And I also love the fact that, you know, Hank Azaria is a fantastic voice actor. I mean, like, he's
yeah.
been on The Simpsons. He's done so many other great deals of work. I think that one of his greatest acting performances is from 1996's The Birdcage with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, and he plays an extremely flamboyant gay man named Agador. He is one of the best parts of the whole movie. If you haven't seen The Birdcage, I highly recommend it. It's also one of Robin Williams' best performances, in my opinion. But the fact that people were so angry about the fact that it was a white guy that voiced an Indian character. I mean, the fact that, number one, yes, a white man voiced an Indian character, but Apu was never meant to be a bad stereotype of Indian people. He was
Exactly.
accepted by the community. He was one of the most beloved characters. I mean, when he did all those really bad things with the food, it's not because of the fact that he was Indian. It was because he was a businessman, for crying out loud. That's what business people, unfortunately, some business people can be utter scumbags. But the guy was but the guy was not a man living in poverty. He was a respectable business owner. He was I mean, like, he had a nice apartment. He had a fancy car. Like, he was a really cool character. I love Apu. And the
Yeah.
fact that, Matt Groening, who is also one of the most leftist people in Hollywood, he even mocks political correctness. And he did that with Apu. There was a whole episode where he made so much fun of leftist extremism on college campuses. It's hilarious the way he did that. And the fact that he said, we are not getting rid of Apu, but unfortunately, I must think that Hank Azaria got a lot of hate mail and he didn't deserve any of it. And the fact that it got to the point where he had to apologize for all of the work that he has done on The Simpsons for the last 30 years and to actually remove Apu from the show. I mean, look, as a Simpsons fan, I also think that it's time for that cow to go out to pasture. I mean, it's great to see that The Simpsons have been around for 30 years. It was great to see The Simpsons in the opening cartoon and onward. I thought it was an adorable little cartoon. But, The Simpsons have made their mark. I think it's time for The Simpsons to go just because, they're way past their prime.
When it's close.
But don't remove one of the staples of that show. You know what I mean? And Jerry Seinfeld, if you haven't seen, is Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee in Netflix in the UK at all? I'm just curious.
I've never heard of it, to be honest, so I'm guessing no.
Okay, well, it's a really great show with Jerry Seinfeld where he literally just takes a famous comedian in his car and they go out to get coffee and they just talk. And there are so many times where he has sat down with a famous comedian, young, new, young, old, black, white, everything in between. And he almost always brings up political correctness and how it's ruining comedy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was Bill Burr, who is a great comedian, by the way, who basically said, first of all, if you don't like my comedy because you think it's insensitive, then don't come to my goddamn show. Don't watch it. You don't have to. But he's like, there needs to be like special rooms for people who are so upset about getting triggered by every little thing that they should basically be saying, this is a politically correct comedy show. Please come inside and watch my show. First of all, I'm pretty sure that none of them will get any laughs because there's probably nothing to laugh at, but it's just because you take a look at the history of comedy. Famous comedic acts or people like Mel Brooks, Monty Python, Richard Pryor, all of these great comedians from the old days, some of their greatest acts and their greatest material would never be accepted in culture today. And it's so sad that comedy is starting to lose its place. I mean, do you know how hard it is for me to actually find a great comedic film in theaters? Like, I didn't see them in theaters, but like I saw the movie Blockers, and I thought it was one of the worst movies I ever saw in my life. I didn't laugh. It was a political correct dumpster fire. It was disgustingly stupid to me.
The ironic thing is, I just watched that film today. I'm not even
Really?
joking. And that's like the most unbelievable coincidence of my life because me and my friend watched it on Netflix earlier, just like, because we just watch films all the time together on Netflix, so like Blockers. Yeah, why not? It just got added onto Netflix. So that's an amazing piece of coincidence. I mean, it was all right. I mean, it made me laugh a few times, but I don't know. I wasn't looking for politically correct stuff. I didn't really notice it. It's just like what I'm being presented. Is it funny? And for the most part, I found it humorous, not amazing, but I just like to point out that incredible coincidence. That just kind of freaked me
That is
out.
that is actually kind of funny. Yeah, I thought that I just did not laugh at all when I watched that movie. I personally, and again, like I didn't go into that movie looking for it. You know, I found
Yeah.
it while I was watching it. Like the fact that the whole story revolved around a girl who was afraid to come out. The fact that it basically was American Pie with females trying to lose their virginity on prom night. That's exactly what happened in American Pie. Once again, no fresh ideas, none. And some of the
Yeah.
movies that I have been reviewing on my channel, especially when I do my fandom features, you know, like I've reviewed movies like Beverly Hills Cop, Animal House. I just reviewed Tommy Boy because this year it's celebrating an anniversary. Last year I reviewed with a friend on YouTube. I reviewed Billy Madison. These were funny movies. They were just funny for the sake of being stupid and funny. And that's one of the and that's one of the few things that I hate. I mean, ironically, you know, one of the things that before political correctness set in, for me personally, I was not really into the gross out humor. I thought that in your face dick jokes where you actually see the actors' privates, I thought that that was just so juvenile and stupid, you know?
Yeah.
I don't feel that seeing men's genitalia is supposed to be a way to make you laugh. Now, when Will Ferrell streaks in Old School and you don't see his privates, that's funny because Will Ferrell is very funny in that movie. Or a movie like Wedding Crashers. That movie is just outlandishly funny. The 40-Year-Old Virgin, hilarious. We just don't get those kinds of movies anymore because everyone is too afraid to just put all their cards out there on the table.
Yeah, it's sad times. It really is sad times. I'm trying to think of examples of that stuff, but gross out humor. It depends on how it's obviously. It's all down to execution, really. If it's just gross for the sake of gross, like Sausage Party, it's like,
Oh God, what a monster! I hate that movie.
yeah, I can't believe I watched that in cinema. I was like, oh, that was decent. Rewatched it. I thought that was decent at one point. No, it was just gross humor, and it felt juvenile in the sense of like just saying
Yes.
f this f that every 5 seconds. That's like what 13-year-old does. Like I saw a couple of kids biking down the street the other day. They're like 12, 13 years old. F this, f that, c word this. I'm like, Jesus Christ. That's like you think you're big and ha ha by saying the c word out loud in public for everyone to hear. That's what Sausage Party felt like. It felt like a film written by a bunch of 12-year-olds,
Yeah.
and it's like um it's like Happy Time Murders as well. I don't know if you watched that monstrosity, but there's the office scene. That
I'll be honest with you. I did see it, and outside of the office scene, I actually enjoyed that movie, and and maybe that's because of the fact that I am a proud Jim Henson whore. I love anything that is linked to Jim Henson. I was excited to know that Brian Henson directed this film, and for me personally, the reason why I liked it was because it was just nice to see Jim Henson's work taken to another level, you know, because I think it was something that people who grew up with things like Sesame Street and The Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock, I think people were sort of waiting for that bar to get pushed, you know?
yeah,
And personally, for me, my favorite part about that movie, I thought that they did a great job with Melissa McCarthy and Maya Rudolph as well. She was my favorite part of the whole movie. And it's funny that you mentioned the Happy Time Murders because I think that one of the funniest comedies of the last decades was Bridesmaids. I thought that that was such a funny movie. And that was another thing that a lot of people are suddenly noticing. Like, there's a lot more movies that are like outrageous comedies now that are involving an all female cast, but a lot of them just don't seem to be hitting the mark. I think Bridesmaids, however, hit the mark on so many levels, and I really had a good time with that movie.
yeah. And on a random side note, you're talking about the whole Jim Henson being brought to that other level with Happy Time Murders. One film I just want to give a shout out to in that regard is a film if you made this film today, you couldn't. Team America. You know, with the
Yeah.
puppetry of like Thunderbirds and stuff. I was thinking that is not a politically correct film whatsoever with the like the whole terrorists and stuff like that, and
Well,
Kim
it's
Jong villain.
yeah.
Shout
I
out.
mean, it's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
It's the creators of South Park. Or it's like when Seth MacFarlane made the Ted movies, you know? Like, those
Yeah.
definitely have a lot of political incorrectness in them. But Team America, yes, is made by
Yeah.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And the fact that there was a writer for one of the new Marvel shows that's going to be on Disney Plus trying to throw them into the whole cancel culture thing, try and get rid of Trey Parker and Matt Stone in the Broadway community, because the Book of Mormon is their baby. And it's one of the most beloved plays on the Broadway circuit. I'm like, don't, if they're just going to offend you, that's the other thing. The best part is she makes the criticism. She gets torn a new asshole. And now she's trying to find a way to still be a relevant person. And it just makes me sick that a little bit about some of these people who really should not be doing these types of things, like these social justice warriors. They think they're fighting the good fight, but they're making the real fight a lot more difficult for the true people that should be fighting these fights. The fact that they're
Yeah.
just craving attention. They want to be relevant. I think that that's another thing that some of these extremists are really trying to go for at this point in time. Another example is, when it comes to comedy, even if it's something that you don't agree with, it doesn't mean that you just can't laugh for the sake of laughing. One of my favorite things is a internet cartoon series called Foamy the Squirrel. If you haven't watched it, I'll talk to you a little bit about it later on. But this guy has been on the internet making these cartoons since 2003, and I've been a fan since 2003. And yes, there have been a couple of things that he has done recently that is ragging on PC culture, on triggers, on safe spaces. Now, do I agree with some of the extreme things that he does say? Because in one of these videos, he goes so far as to mock mental illness. Now, because I laugh at what he says, does that mean that I am against people with mental illnesses? Do I think that they are things that I don't take seriously? Oh, hell no. I just watch this guy because I find his material funny. I just want to laugh for the sake of laughing. Even though there are people that say that when it comes to comedy, there is always a little bit of truth to every single joke that's said, I still feel that there's nothing wrong with laughing for the sake of laughing. If I was someone who took offense to everything, I would be going against every person who made a Jewish joke in a television show or a movie or anything else for that matter. You gotta laugh at yourself sometimes as well.
Yeah. I'll admit I'm a fan of like dark humor. I'm not gonna give examples, obviously, but like, I s- this is my hidden side that people don't see. But like, I cruise like the dark jokes Reddit, and there is some extremely offensive stuff on there. Like if you're a snowflake, you'll go on there and have a you just won't be able to handle it. But because I realized that like making fun of certain things, like there are sometimes I draw the line. Like I'm not a fan of like cancer jokes. That just gets under my skin. But like
Yeah.
there are things like dark jokes, offensive jokes, like offensive to certain things. But like dark offensive jokes, I like them only if they're clever though. That's like if I can understand the joke itself, and obviously I realize it's a joke and they're not actually making fun of the thing that's the subject of it. I laugh at clever jokes. Like if jokes have intelligence behind them and if it's well thought out, then and if it's funny, I'll laugh. And it's like if it's to do with something offensive, it'll have that extra kind of feel to it. Like, oh, that took me off guard. But yeah, I'm a fan of that. I'm all for that. But people just need to, just get a grip and realize, it's funny to laugh. I mean, taking it to a film side, going back to cancer, funnily enough, is the film 50-50 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. I love that movie.
Watched it a couple of weeks ago, random Netflix watch, and you think a film about a guy who gets cancer and it's a comedy. Seth Rogen's in there. But it's brilliant the way they balance it, and it just reminds you that in the darkest times and with the most grim of things it's important to laugh, and the film does it amazingly. Like at the end
Yeah.
of the film, I'm tearing up, and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt's like, "I'm high as a motherfucker," and I burst out laughing. He's like,
Yeah, that's a movie that I think more people need to see. I love that movie. It's fantastic. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I just posted a review for this movie. I watched The Upside with
mm,
Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. And the thing about that film is it was not without its share of controversy. People got
mm,
so mad about the fact that a man that can walk played a quadriplegic. I mean, that's another issue that I
mm,
have. I hate it when people get angry when certain actors do certain things and they're like, no, someone else should be doing that. I mean, I'll give you two great examples. You know the show How I Met Your Mother? Neil Patrick Harris, a gay guy played the straightest of straight men. Modern Family, Eric Stonestreet plays the half of a gay couple and he's a straight guy. You know what? That should not be something that should make people angry, you know? Or when in Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy pretends in one scene that he's gay. It's not for the sake of offending people, you know?
mm.
I get so angry when people say, oh, if there's a gay character on the show, it has to be a gay person. If it's a handicapped person, it has to be a handicapped person. I mean, I love the fact that Millicent Simmons, you know, she's a deaf girl and she's in A Quiet Place as a deaf girl. I like the fact that they're at least utilizing her acting abilities, and I think that that is fantastic that they're using her. But if
Yeah.
someone is acting and pretending that that person has a disability, like when Patty Duke played Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker way back in the day, don't be offended by that. The story is still trying to be told the way it's supposed to be told. I mean, okay, if a white person plays a black, is supposed to play a black person, like the whole thing that when Harriet was coming out in theaters, when that movie was originally thought about, like in the 1990s, an idiot said, let's choose Julia Roberts to play Harriet Tubman. And they're like, are you kidding me? Well, no one, and his excuse was, well, no one's going to know she was a black woman. I'm like, everybody knows that Harriet Tubman was a black woman. What is your problem? You know, sometimes there's stupidity in this world, and it's just gotta be, it's got, those types of people just need a slap across the face. You know what I mean? When you're that ignorant and that stupid, that's a reason to be angry.
Yeah. What was that story recently about Scarlett Johansson was going to play like a transgender person?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, you can't do that. You're not a transgender person. And then she eventually had to quit because there was just so many people who just don't understand the concept of acting and pretend.
And
It's
nobody,
stupid. It's
yeah,
unbelievable.
and nobody seemed to complain when Eddie Redmayne played the Danish girl, the first
Yeah,
transgender person.
yeah. I mean, Jared Leto as well. He was a what was he? Was he transgender across the cross dresser? I can't remember what he was in Dallas
I
Buyers.
believe that he, yeah, in Dallas Buyers Club, I believe that he was gay. I don't believe he was transgender. I'm
All right.
quite certain that he was gay.
Oh, there you go. No one complained about that, but it's just I don't. Yeah, acting, pretend. Actors, their job is to pretend to be other people. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, like, I am quite certain that in one of the stupidest movies like the Brady Bunch movie, I'm pretty sure that RuPaul was playing a straight woman and not a gay woman, even though we all know who RuPaul is. And don't get me wrong, I think that RuPaul is extremely funny. I watched the SNL episode where RuPaul was a guest, and I thought that RuPaul was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, because RuPaul likes to be funny, you know? But that's what I'm trying to say. It's like straight people can play gay people can play straight people. That's what it is from one of my favorite shows, Entourage. Jeremy Piven says Hilary Swank won an Oscar pretending that she has a dick. That is what actors do. They pretend.
Yeah, and people just need to realize that, and just the people just so quick to just shout and scream without actually sitting back and thinking about, again, the magic word of context and the actual what things mean and not what they are perceiving it and already quickly judging it to mean in their own head.
Exactly. And that will lead us to the final question. And that is, one of the things that I've recently been hearing is it takes about 5 to 6 years for PC culture to sort of phase out and go back into obscurity. People are actually saying that it's sort of dying down right now. If that is the case, that it is actually happening, and if it's not the case, meaning that it might actually, at least the way I see it, I personally think that it's sticking around. Do you
Yeah.
think that if it sticks around even longer, it will be a healthy thing for the world? Or do you think that it's just going to continue to cause the rift to keep getting wider and not unite?
I definitely see it sticking around. I think it's just in the age of the internet where people constantly have this platform. I just see it being very unlikely for it to just die down because, some people in the world just don't change. That's just the harsh reality of it. And these thoughts and these perceptions and these points of view and these assumptions and these thoughts are always going to be had by someone. Someone is always going to feel this way about political incorrectness, saying this about films, and that we need this and this is being too woke and blah blah blah. That's always going to be there, and as long as it is being used in an argumentative context, I can't see it being healthy for anybody unless people learn to just have a civil conversation and talk about it properly, civilly, like individuals and like people. I mean, that would be a glorious world to live in, where we could all coexist and be all of one. But I just, I'm an optimist, but then a lot of the times the realist just comes, phew, and then I just keep coming back to earth and going, yeah, but it's not. That's not gonna
Yeah,
work.
I truthfully feel that at this point in time, something just needs to happen that just shakes up the leftist and SJW side of the coin here. And quite frankly, I've been saying this to people. I think that Boris Johnson becoming the Prime Minister of England was one telltale sign. But if Donald Trump gets reelected for another 4 years, I seriously think that that is going to cause all these people to take a look at themselves and say, maybe I shouldn't be preaching cancel culture for people who disagree with me. Maybe if I actually talk to people and let them hear
Mm.
where I'm coming from, let them hear my side of the story, maybe that will be a way to unite people. I mean, my personal attitude is such. I truthfully feel that, especially with what's been going on with the Democratic race that's happening right now, I'm watching it, which everybody practically dubs the clown show at this point in time. But I've been watching these debates. I've been watching all of these people, and some of these people are just, some of the things that they say are so loony. I know that the good messages are there, but they just, every single time someone opened up their mouths and spewed identity politics, I'm like, there's a point off for you, and there's another point off for you, or so. It's funny to me. I really think that when it comes to getting my comedy these days, it's Pixar, it's Disney Pixar movies and Disney in general, anything from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and anything political. That's where I'm getting my laughs right now, because, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be politics that makes me look at the world in a very comedically generated manner. It shouldn't be. There's some very important things that we all need to fix, whether you live in the United States or whether you live in another country. No matter where you are, politics is so untrusted these days.
Mm.
And the fact that there seems to be no way that things are going to get better because nobody wants to try and agree on something. I
Yeah.
mean, especially in the world that we're living in right now with here we go, the coronavirus gets brought up, finally. The fact that the coronavirus doesn't care if you are on the left or on the right. The coronavirus doesn't care if you are white, black, yellow, brown, doesn't care. It's going to get you, and if you're not taking good care of yourself, it's going to make you very sick, and God forbid, it might even kill you. The fact that we're still not being unified, the fact that we are still at each other's throats at a time like this just makes me really, really sad. And I seriously think that something's gonna give. I really feel that something's gonna give at this point in time. You know?
Yeah, something's gonna give. It's just, I hope when it does give, it will just have a positive repercussion on us all, not like, well, obviously not a negative repercussion. I just hope that whenever that something does give, it's a good thing, and hopefully we can all take a look at ourselves and just stop shouting, stop screaming, and stop the, as you say, the lunacy, and just think without, think before speak
Yeah.
is, I guess, a good motto for the whole PC stuff, and take into account the magic word of context, and just stop being stupid.
Yeah.
To put it,
I still think that, before we close this out, we didn't even talk about this. We have to talk about Parasite winning Best Picture. I think
yeah,
that one of the stupidest things that came out of the right side of the coin, and unfortunately the same thing came out of the mouth of the president. The fact that they were mocking the fact that Parasite won Best Picture, the fact that a non-English speaking film won Best Picture, the fact that it was a bad thing for the country. Well, you want to know what I took away from that movie after I was so fortunate to actually see it? Do you want to know why Parasite won Best Picture, everybody? It won Best Picture because it was original, it was something different, and it pushed the bar. The fact that Hollywood is afraid to do that right now, that is why an English-speaking film did not win Best Picture, because Parasite was the best movie that came out in 2019. It was. So maybe if you take a little bit of an idea from Parasite and actually not worry about making everybody feel all warm and toasty inside, and actually push some bars, maybe an English-speaking film will win again. That's just the way that I look at it. Right now, the best movie that people are talking about right now is Invisible Man.
yeah,
And I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but apparently I've heard that it pushes the bar. And that's what Lee Wanell does. He did it with Saw, he did it with Upgrade, and apparently he's doing the same thing with Invisible Man. And that's what Hollywood needs to do. Stop remaking, stop worrying about getting canceled, stop worrying about getting attacked on Twitter. Bring your vision. Because if you don't bring your vision, then what the hell are you even doing if you can't even do what you want to do?
yeah, and stop being, and when you do bring your vision and people don't like it, don't be reactionary to it either.
Yeah, because when someone leaves me a bad comment, like I still get people giving me negative comments on reviews of Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket that I made years ago. I don't like those movies. I basically told people why I didn't like those movies. So when someone sends me a comment, as long as it is not a stupid comment, like it's not just a "you suck," when someone actually starts to give me a big diatribe about why I'm wrong, thank you for doing that. Because here's the way I felt. Have a conversation with that person. And I think what's really funny is the more times I've had those kinds of situations where I've actually given people more of my thoughts on it, then they actually end up appreciating and even starting to subscribe to my channel. I said the same thing about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I appreciated the fact that the film was made, but I personally thought that it wasn't the greatest. Apparently people do think that it's the greatest. I was excited to see more of the Spider-Man world that I missed, but I felt that it did a couple of things that just didn't work for me. But I still want more. I'd like to see the sequel. I'd like to try and really get to learn more about all of these other different Spider-Men. And I thought the animation was fantastic. It wasn't the best movie that I thought, in my opinion, but I'm glad that it's out there, and I'm glad that it's making its money. That's my attitude. And that's what it is. Live and let live.
Live and let live, not live and let die.
There, unless it's the James Bond movie. But anyway, everybody, I think that that's a good place to end it right now. Jack, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun, great conversation, and I'm hoping you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My throat is killing me because I'm just, it's just whatever, but it was worth it. I hope it's worth it in the long run. And yeah, thanks very much for having me on. I hope I gave a good enough contribution, but
I think you did.
That's just what I do. I say how I feel, and I'm very basic, but that's me. And thanks for having me.
No problem. That's what it's all about, especially as us content creators. We have to be ourselves and just show people what we appreciate. So everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to another episode of Sunday Sit Down where we have another great topic to discuss, but most importantly, as always, another great YouTuber to discuss it with. I'll see you all in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.